Okay, so here's the deal. You know how I've been talking over the past 2 to 3 weeks about how the Social Security Administration as a system, it is the most famous socialism system that we have in America. It's helped millions of people financially survive. It's just an incredible, amazing program. It is awesome, but it is going to break. And this time it's not going to be like 1983. This time it's going to be worse. 1983, they passed a bunch of stuff that they've just recently started repealing. That's the game. They're repealing all the fixes they put in 1983, which is, of course, making the trust funds run out faster. So I've been telling people this for a while that, like, look, if you want to get elected as a politician and you want Social Security people to like you, just go back to all the restrictions they put in 1983, pick one, and say you're going to get rid of it. Taxing retirement benefits? Boom, 1983. Oh, around there, actually. You want to go ahead and get rid of this one was 1983. Basically giving more money to those who have dual pensions. You want to you want to keep that away. Well, that was 1983. Okay. Social Security Fairness Act, Biden passed it. Boom. You got that through. Now, the main thing they have to kind of keep in mind is that they're not giving you accurate information on how long the trust funds are going to last for two main reasons. Number one, our politicians know that in order to get votes, they have to get Social Security recipient votes. In order to get Social Security recipient votes, they got to give you something. In order to give you something, they got to get rid of something that was passed in 1983 or around 1983. So that's number one. So when they say, will Social Security trust funds last another 8 years, 9 years, 10 years? They don't know, but they know there's a problem because the politicians keep making the benefits run out faster. Because the politicians are promising things when they're trying to get elected, and then once they get passed, they end up in a big, beautiful bill, and there you go. Issue number two, as to why these trust funds are not going to last as long as they claim they are, is that they are making a massive error, which may be purposeful. We don't know. You know what I mean? We know that they know math because they're actuaries. They believe that the birth rate for fertility purposes is at 1.9, like 1.9 kids per woman. You know what I mean? They don't measure it against men, but I'm not going to get into that argument because that would destroy many arguments. So we're not going to touch that. So anyways, 1.9, right? Essentially, kids per woman. Now, some of you who are not so good with math will say, how can a woman have 0.9 of a child? You are correct. However, it is a statistic. It is not the actual 90% loaded of a child and then 10% was not there. That's not what they're saying. They're not talking about a congenital malformation. Okay. Although when I saw the person try to defend themselves, when I was responding to them on that, I was impressed and had to emotionally control my excitement for life on Earth. My excitement for life on Earth. Now, next thing. Okay. So the other thing is that it's not 1.9. It's like 1.6 something, which is greatly less, which means we don't make enough new humans to work to make money. So the only thing that can save us is to have robots and artificial intelligence work and get taxed. So you buy a robot and it gets taxed. It'll be like a rental property. See that rental property over there? People rent it, they pay the owner. Robots will do the same thing. However, Congress is looking at all these options and they're going, you know what? A lot of these options, they're not going to work. They're not going to work at the level needed. So when I say Social Security needs a fix, it doesn't need like a cute fix. Like, hey, we're just going to like do a new website color, or a pretty big fix. Like, hey, we're going to go ahead and, change, half of the rule books to reflect what, the new situation is going to be. No, I mean, it needs a colossal overhaul so that financially the government is not making money off of what we pay in, and then basically doing their own version of taxation on what we put in FICA taxes through these special interest bonds that they have. I mean, like, we're going to have to figure out a totally different system from where the money comes from that we invest from the money we pay in, because you can't trust the government with it because they've failed it multiple times. They knew when they passed in 1983 that this thing was going to fail again. They knew in 1983 it was going to fail. And now here we come, 2032, 2033 is, best likely chance of when the trust funds are going to fail, which is absolutely horrible. So now all of a sudden the politicians are coming out and they're like, you know what, maybe we need a fix, maybe we need to like sprinkle some glitter on this thing and fix this before it all goes to shit. Because remember, if Social Security starts to fail and people get a 20% reduction in what their check is, then 50% of those people getting that are now going to have to be selling their house, finding a new apartment, or literally, having to find some situation where they go on county and state and federal welfare, where SSI is going to have to magically boost it. Because that's where we're going. Where we're going is the actual money you paid in of your life was already spent on another generation. So what my generation is paying in isn't enough because we don't make enough. Right? I'm not getting on boomers. Y'all get offended when I explain to you what the boomers did wrong. I'm not going to get on boomers in this video. Although if you would just take a moment and think about what I say about it and realize that it is your ego that denies the reality of why we don't make products in this country, you know what I mean? I think everybody would be a lot happier, but we're not going into that. We're not touching that. That's an icky. We're not touching it. All right. So the bottom line is this. All right. We are in a situation where our trust funds, no matter what we do, in most situations are going to fail. And if they fail, there's going to be a lot of people who have to change their standard of living. Okay. And I don't just mean in the sense of they're going to have to not buy Starbucks, 5 out of 7 days of the week. I mean like a real change. Like, they're living in a new spot. They're swapping out their car. They're blah, 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 blah. Okay. So here's what they've come up with. Article released by the Washington Post. Also, please remember, if you enjoy these videos, please remember to like and subscribe, help share the word. All right. Our bipartisan plan, and just remember, this is both Democrats and Republicans at this point because they know this is going to be bad. Our bipartisan plan could rescue Social Security. A separate trust fund could invest in private business rather than in government bonds. Now, you may be wondering why your hard-earned money was invested into government bonds. It was invested into government bonds so that the government could take your money, in part, it's not all invested there, and spend it on what they wanted to. Okay? There are some restrictions, but again, it's spending it on what they wanted to. And then, usually 15 later, they have to pay that money back with interest, but they have to borrow money against you, the lender, the work product of the American people, to then pay back the money they already took from you in the form of a tax called FICA taxes. So when we look at this situation and we say, wow, socialism is great, except for how this is going, that would be correct. They kind of snookered the money from us and then used we'll outgrow the debt. I don't know, you'd call it a mental theory of how they were going to beat the debt, and it failed. They couldn't outgrow it. They just could not grow it because when you strangle the population's ability to go ahead and make money by not giving them free healthcare to keep them healthy and creating this ridiculous, design of culture where there's that many people on welfare that shouldn't be on welfare, you're not going to have enough people to work and earn money to pay taxes, to pay for the government to spend money on what it wants to spend money on, and then have it 15 years later when the bond comes due, then they just take out another loan to go ahead and pay off the debt and yada, yada. So it's not a working system. It doesn't work. So what these politicians are now saying is, hey, look, we're talking about Bill Cassidy, Republican Louisiana. We're talking about Tim Kaine, Democrat, Virginia. What's happening is this. The politicians realize that the government has, snookered the American people. And they're saying, we can't trust the government anymore. Both Democrats and Republicans. We can't have faith in them anymore. So as a result of that, we have to now invest money like a normal person would that gets good returns. Which doesn't sound unreasonable on its head. But then when some politician screams, they're stealing our Social Security benefits and investing it in the private market, it's going to fail. Yeah, it could fail. It could. But guess what is definitively going to fail? Because when they tell you, oh, your Social Security money is backed by the U.S. government, it is through the insurance of the federal government that you will get your check every month. That is a lie. That is a lie. The reason it's a lie is because there's not enough money in the federal government to pay for when the trust funds fail. So, it's backed by the federal government. No, it's not, because when the federal government can't afford its debt, it can't be backed. And when the federal government can't print more money to pay for its debt because it will vastly devalue the dollar and put it in an even worse situation, guess what? It is no longer backed by the credibility of the federal government. That's why Moody's gave the federal government a shittier rating when it comes to lending. All right, so now everybody's on board. Everybody's happy. We feel good. Cool. If Congress doesn't act, the Social Security Trust Fund will be insolvent as soon as 2033. No, it'll be before that. It'll be before that. And millions of Americans who have been paying into the program will see a significant portion of their promised benefits cut. That's why we're working on a bipartisan proposal for a new investment fund that would infuse much needed money into Social Security while ensuring no one on Social Security or nearing retirement sees any change to the benefits whatsoever. So in other words, they've given up on trying to politically convince you that paying the government FICA taxes and letting them use your money in a very shitty way ends up in a horrible, horrible situation like it keeps doing so many decades after so many decades, because people cannot be convinced of that the government is not good with money. We have to create a separate trust, which is fine. You know what I mean? The emotional landscape of people understanding how investments work ain't going to happen because it's just, you know what I mean? YouTube helps. A lot of people are learning about investments now that they never had before. But to be fair, this is a situation, to be fair, where we have to convince Americans in total, and most Americans don't understand math when it comes to investments. And that's okay. Like if you're ever looking at a candle chart, if you're ever looking at a this or that or this or that or whatever, you might not know enough to give advice. That's most Americans, and that's fine. We shouldn't have punished those people by letting the government tell them how to do their thing, because now we're looking at a fail point. All right. And it's a lifetime fail point. Remember, it's the lifetime of a human being working and paying in 12.4 plus the Medicare on top. So you're looking 16, 17-ish% of what you made each year. A month and a half of each year went into Social Security that you worked. Think about that. A month and a half of what, well, technically, no, it would be a little bit different than that. So it could be anywhere from a month to 2 months, depending on what you actually buy into. But the bottom line is this, because there's Medicare Advantage. All right. So the bottom line is it could be a month, it could be 2 months. But the point is, of each year, you paid a lot of taxes over your lifetime. And now they're like, sorry, we screwed up the math. You're not going to get back what you're supposed to get back. Social Security is currently funded through payroll taxes, which are not keeping pace with the amount needed to sustain the program. For now, the Social Security Trust Fund, which is invested exclusively in U.S. government bonds yielding low returns, is helping to fill the gap. It's not filling the gap. You know what I mean? It's not. If it was filling the gap, we wouldn't have this crisis. But it can't for long. The most recent Social Security Trustees report showed that payroll tax revenue will fall more than $25 trillion short of owed benefits over the next 75 years in today's dollars if the trust fund becomes insolvent. So just to clarify, when I said it was a big problem, some of you have a hard time understanding what $1 trillion is, but if you ever get a chance to look up like what $1 trillion looks like on a football field, it will surprise you. When some of you wonder like what $1 billion is, some of you don't know how to define $1 billion. Just ask how many millions go into $1 billion and it will surprise you. Okay, so payroll tax revenue will fall more than $25 trillion short of owed benefits over the next 75 years. So $25 trillion. It's a $25 trillion problem. $25 trillion. $25 trillion. Okay. All right, so we propose creating an additional investment fund in parallel to the trust fund, not replacing it, that would be invested in stocks, bonds, and other investments that generate a higher rate of return, helping keep the program from running dry. We estimate that it would take $1.5 trillion upfront investment into the fund to get it going, and we propose giving the fund 75 years to grow. The Treasury would temporarily shoulder the burden of providing benefits to Social Security beneficiaries, but when the new fund's 75 years are up, it would pay the Treasury back and supplement payroll taxes to help fill the future gap. So it's a loan that they hope will be invested correctly. And when it is invested correctly, it should make high enough returns to pay back the Treasury after 75 years. Okay, the result, the consistent delivery of Social Security benefits for generations of Americans and a reduction to the United States long-term indebtedness by up to 20%. A substantial majority of Americans are concerned about the challenges facing Social Security. We understand if they also question whether politicians could use the proceeds of the new funds we propose for other objectives. The risk can be effectively managed by putting in place guardrails modeled after those used by the Thrift Savings Plan, including a fiduciary duty to seek a maximal return on investments and deterrence measures to address concerns that a future Congress might want to raid the fund. As for transparency, the new fund should be subject to annual audits published online. Good. We know a program like this could work because it already has. In 2001, Congress created the National Railroad Retirement Investment Trust, a diversified investment fund designated to ensure retirement benefits payouts for railroad workers. The trust has remained firmly in the black, with returns even exceeding expectations at some points and with payments consistently remaining reliable and on schedule. Yeah, because they invest it like normal people. The government doesn't make good returns. Like, you don't see Wall Street running around and being like, oh my goodness, I want to invest in the government like right now. Oh, it's such an amazing investment. They don't do that. No, they're investing in companies that are about to, break through with some brilliant thing, make a ton of products, sell it, and then sell it to some other group that just buys companies and, basically does whatever they want with them. Our proposal is also consistent with virtually every other pension plan, state and private, currently operating in our country, and it matches the strategy most nations use to fund their retirement programs. There's a nationwide appetite to implement a bipartisan, common sense plan like ours. Waiting until the Social Security Trust Fund is on the eve of crisis would have difficult and preventable consequences. Congress should seize the moment. So let me put it to you another way. You're not going to have a choice because they're going to do stuff without you really being a part of I said yes and I said no. They're going to do whatever they're going to do anyways. If they don't do this, you're going to have mass chaos in a relatively short amount of time. If you do this and the Treasury takes out a loan and they're allowed to invest it, get top Wall Street people saying, okay, this company looks like it's going to be doing good. This company looks like it's got potential. If they Pelosi this thing a bit, then Social Security benefits for the rest of the human race as America exists will be fine. But if we keep investing money into the U.S. government through government-issued special interest bonds, we will always fail. The government is not good at making money. The government is great, amazing, masterful at spending money. If they want out of division their budget to stay the same or get bigger, they got to spend what they got. Government spends money. That's it. That's the whole schmutz. That's how it works. That's how the whole thing goes. All right. Attorney Walter Hnot, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like and subscribe. I've got to get on phone calls for the law firm. Please remember, if you go over to Google and type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida, to throw some stars up there. I will catch you a little bit later. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. We'll rock and roll from there. Also, please remember, a lot of you want to ask me Medicare questions. I don't do Medicare. That's not my thing. I do disability law. I do Social Security law. Over here, Medicare. Give them a call, Chapter. I partnered with them. They can do a tune-up on your benefits when it comes to finding a good program for you, when it comes to your Medicare and all the options and getting full coverage. You can call their number right here, 339-226-6287, or use the link right below. Also, please remember, I go live on Thursdays and Mondays. So tonight I'll be live to answer questions about disability law for free. And then also, please remember, if you need a full 1-hour private session where you just want to access my brain for an hour, mini contract is below. Catch you a little bit later. We'll rock and roll from there. Attorney Walter Hnot, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.